Hey, 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 what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. And joining me this week on the podcast is a dear friend who I actually met through doing some work as an MC for the Walk for a Cure event for Arthritis Foundation Hawaii. She was the former executive director there. And since then, she has gone on to start off continuing doing some amazing work in our communities for all kinds of leaders and future leaders with her business Talk Story with Me. You can find it on talkstorywithme.com. But without further ado, I'd love to catch up with my dear friend here. Please help me welcome Dr. Marshawn Martin. Hi, Dr. Martin.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Uh, um, I know that your title is Dr. Marshawn Martin. What is your doctorate? And I never actually asked you that.
Sure, it's a doctorate in education, so it's education and
Oh,
leadership. Mhm.
oh no, wait. So how did you get involved in wanting to go in that direction? Was that something that like you grew up wanting to pursue, or did you kind of find that as you went on through your schooling career?
Yeah, that's such a long story, so I'm glad we have a little bit of time. But I'll appreciate. Right out of high school, I moved out on my own. I wanted to be independent, and so I started working in business development sales. And that worked well for me for a while. But then when I reached the age of about 30, I said, I need to go back to school. And so I didn't start going back to school even for my bachelor's until I was 30 years old.
No way.
Yeah, so when I was
Wow.
applying to go to school, you have to, of course, do an interview with your
Hmm.
enrollment counselor. And they said, you know what? We have a new team we're developing that you would be a good fit for. It's a new business development for the university. And so therein started a career in higher education. I handled partnerships for universities, whether it was anything from corporate education opportunities to international students studying abroad. So I traveled the world handling
Wow.
international partnerships, and through that process was fortunate enough to also get my education. So I started with a bachelor's and ended up with a doctorate simply because I was working in the field.
So, which university was this at that you went into
So it
school?
started with University of Phoenix,
Okay.
and then I've worked with Alliant International University, which is based in San Diego, a private university there. And now I work for UH Hilo as an instructor.
Oh wow. And so, what did you understand as to why they approached you with this opportunity? Like, what sparked that? I
Sure.
guess that opportunity.
When I was applying for the position, I had actually been working prior in hotel global convention sales, things in the
Wow.
hospitality industry. And then I had transitioned to real estate, handling corporate relocations for the real estate world. So it was residential real estate, but it was through government contracts like with Northrop Grumman, SAIC, all of those kind of organizations. So I think just my enrollment counselor did a wonderful job of kind of understanding what I do and that it might be a good fit. And I think it was within a week I was asked to join the team there. It was really fast situation, completely unexpected, and so thankful because it really did change the direction of my life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that your journey through education followed this path because mine kind of is similar where um, I didn't finish college initially and I started going into sales and all that kind of stuff. But I went a different route where I was like, well, I think I don't want to go back. So I never actually finished college. You
I understand.
actually you went through and not only finished college, you like went far and beyond like to get a doctorate. So
Yeah.
um, what was it about, I guess, maybe the first time around that you didn't pursue that higher education earlier versus and decide later on like this is the time to make that journey to getting your doctorate?
It was purely survival mode. I was out on my
Ah,
own. Without an education, what do you do that's provides a decent enough income to support
yeah.
yourself? Sales is one of the few things, business development and sales. And so it was just a natural thing for me to get into at the time. And that's all it was. It was just out of necessity that I was in that position to start with. And then realizing later on that, if I wanted any type of something, and mind you, this was early 2000s. So the world was different
Hmm.
then. We were still in a traditional business model mindset, meaning, professionally, you would go to a job, you'd have tenure, you advance up the ranks so that, and we know now that the world is different. There are
Yeah.
different opportunities available to us. But back then it was, if I want to make anything of myself, even in the business development world, I need to go back and at least to be competitive to the other ones that are trying to move up the ranks also. Right? I need my
Yeah.
at least need a bachelor's degree, if not a master's. And then it just transitioned naturally into higher education.
So when you were going through like high school and such, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, or were you just kind of like, well, let's see what happens? Because that's how I was. I had a lot of anxiety to like trying to imagine what I could do for a living, and I just had no clue. And that's kind of, I went the college route at first, and I was like, don't know what I'm going to college for, but maybe I'll figure it out. And then kind of similar, like I needed to
Yeah.
make money, so I just went into sales and realized, maybe I don't want to finish school anymore. It's a terrible example. People listening, kids, don't follow me.
No, I think we all kind of go through that. That's exactly what happened. I did enroll into a community college right out of high school, trying to juggle that with my two or three part-time jobs to survive.
Yeah,
My passion as a kid growing up, I always wanted to work with children, but I knew I didn't want to be a pediatrician because then you see them when they're ill, and that made me
right.
sad. So I wanted to be an OBGYN. So when I first
Interesting.
got into community college, I was kind of going that pre-med route.
Hmm.
And I was discouraged early on just simply because of the malpractice insurance.
Oh,
And, they were giving us these real conversations of this is kind of what you're facing and your student loans and things of that nature. And so I said, well, I don't know, and at the same time too, I needed to find a way to support myself. So it was really hard to think about going to medical school and support myself. Yeah, so I just
yeah.
switched gears and I said, I'm going to take some time to figure out what I want to do. And that's when I focused on my career. And then I didn't go back to school until much later. Hmm.
It's kind of similar to my path too, because I also was thinking when I was in college, like I would like to work with kids, and so I thought I would be a teacher. And then when I went to look into it, I was like, oh, I got to do X, Y, and Z just to get accepted into the education department. I was like, nah, never mind.
Yeah, I know. I give teachers in K-12 all the credit in the world. That is
Yeah.
very tough job, but very commendable for sure.
So where did you grow up? Because are you originally from Hawaii?
No, I'm originally from San Diego native.
Oh, okay.
There, and my first visit to Hawaii was in 2003. I was attending a family member's wedding, and when I was leaving, I felt it was just tragic. When I was leaving, I said, I don't want to leave. My soul is here. I'm going to figure out a way to at least visit every year. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did. And it turned into like 2 and 3 trips a year. Finally, in 2011, when I was working for University of Phoenix, they had a need for someone here in Hawaii. And so I asked my husband, what's your thought about moving to Hawaii? And he said, let's go. And so we did. We jumped on it and we haven't looked back, and there's no regrets. I mean, growing up in San Diego is beautiful as well. And the only thing better is Hawaii. And so, yep, we're here for that reason.
Well, I've often heard, people who are familiar with both Hawaii and San Diego, like if there was a place to go, if you couldn't live in Hawaii, where would be the next place that, or where would be the place that you would want to go? And it's pretty popular that San Diego is very similar in that type of living experience, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, San Diego is definitely faster paced, and that's what we were trying to get away from. Even though San Diego for California is considered laid back,
Yeah.
it's still not Hawaii, right? And then honestly, in the winter, San Diego gets pretty cool, and I am just not a cool person at all. And so I love it here. The winters here are ideal for me because they don't exist. So it's great.
So was your husband also born and raised in San Diego as well?
Not San Diego, but Riverside
Oh,
County,
okay.
the next county north of San Diego. So, yep, we're both from Southern California. He did move around a lot to other states growing up, but
Oh,
primarily Southern California. And he was in the Navy, so he had been to Hawaii before because
Nice.
of the Navy, but not stationed here. So
Hmm.
he was at least familiar and knew, if we were to make the move, what to expect, and so it was great. Yeah.
What was he doing at the time when you guys decided to move?
So when we decided to move, he's a disabled veteran. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
been going to school. He graduates in like 2 weeks. I'm so proud of him
Oh,
with his
wow.
degree in information technology, and then he's pursuing a master's in cybersecurity digital forensics. So
Holy smokes. That's a mouthful right there.
I always tell him, like, I appreciate people with your brain because it
Yeah.
is definitely not me. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's just been kind of, in that rehabilitation process, adjusting to a new
Nice.
life. And it has taken him some time, but, in figuring out what his next career move would be. And
Hmm.
yeah, he's just wanting to pursue that. That's really of interest to him.
Oh, neat. And so, what was the transition like when you first moved here for both of you? Like, because did you have your children
No,
already at that time?
well, our older son was only 9 months old
Oh,
when
wow.
we moved here. So he's lived most of his life in Hawaii. And then our younger one was born at Castle in Kailua.
Oh,
And,
cool.
and so, yeah, this is primarily what they know, aside from the trips that we've done back and forth to California. So for them, no issues transitioning at all.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit easier for me because my coworkers, I had already known my coworkers prior to moving here, just from the university landscape. And I think it was harder for my husband because he
Mm,
moved here with really not knowing anybody, and coming from Southern California, he's an outsider coming in. And so the wonderful thing is, I really feel like when you show people that you're invested in the
yeah.
community, that you're not going anywhere. I think people
Hmm.
can go so quickly that there's this kind of hesitation to get too close sometimes, and I can understand that. So when people learn that we are planted and rooted, and we're going to stay, and it's I've always said, people come here for the beaches and the beauty of that. For us, the beauty is the people.
Yeah.
And there's no arguing that in my book. Like, that's just a given for me. So,
Hmm.
as beautiful as Hawaii is, it's not as beautiful as the people. That's what makes Hawaii for us. And so, yeah, we've made some great friends and family. Really,
I know. Yeah. I know a lot of people that I've talked to, have had that same kind of experience of wanting to move here because there's a deep connection. There's something that, is unexplainable for them that they just feel like they belong here. But I have to imagine that that first couple years has to be um, a transition as far as like getting to meet people and make those relationships. Um, did you, would you have any advice or can you share any of your experience of how you and your family kind of, aside from, I know you mentioned work, you had some friends already, but especially for your husband, like how did you find ways to make those relationships and connections to start to get your roots here?
Yeah, I think what helped with me, at least, is I come from a Latin background. And I think there's a lot of similarities in the cultures, meaning in the Latin background, it's very rude to talk business right away. It's always
Hmm.
about building a relationship. And that's the way we approached it moving here was, we're going to get to know people and be more interested in them than sharing what we're about. That's our job. The one thing I would love to share for anybody considering moving is you're moving here for a reason, and that's because of what you see here. So if you come here trying to change that,
Mm,
that's, I think, where people have a disconnect. Come here knowing that it will be you acclimating and not the other way around.
yeah.
And if you're going to try to change anything, it would be for the betterment of the community, not to make it more convenient necessarily, but really try to
Hmm.
preserve what we have here, what this is all about.
Yeah, and you're mentioning something too about, not starting off with talking business, and that's something that when I was in my sales career, anytime we had any kind of trainers come in from the continental US and whatnot, it was really difficult to translate their teachings to, I guess, our style here because it was very, very
Hmm.
cold and very, try to convince them through, these kind of pushy methods, and it just
Right.
never felt comfortable. For you, if with your background of starting off in business and sales in the mainland, and then coming here and kind of seeing how it worked, was it a difficult, process of trying to kind of unlearn some of the things that you had kind of started off with?
No, and I'll tell you why, because I intentionally avoided traditional sales and
Oh,
gravitated more towards business development, because therein lies the difference. Business development is that true relationship building. It's your sales cycle, for lack of a better term,
yeah.
right, is very long, 12 months to 2 years in business development. So if it's going to take that long to really establish the agreement, then that whole time you're building a relationship. And that's what I enjoy. You're going to get much more out of that versus the transactional sales model.
Hmm.
And that doesn't
Yeah.
feel comfortable to me at all anyway. So, yes, that's why I think it was such a good fit coming this way and trying to just acclimate here with the same strategies that I did there.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Like, for me, I never felt comfortable in as many sales positions as I would get. I would feel so uncomfortable. And now owning our own business, the developing our business is something that I feel so, passionate about, excited, and comfortable with. And I can see the difference between, those two things
Yeah,
that you're describing. Yeah.
definitely. When you have those relationships, then that's what's going to keep a business long standing. I have a firm
Yeah.
belief in that, versus trying to just do the quick sales over and over again.
So how did you go from how did you get involved with the where we met with the Arthritis Foundation here in Hawaii?
Such a good question again, Nolan. Yeah. So at the time, I had taken leave from working. My dad was ill, and so I stopped. Resigned from my position in California to help care for him through his issues, and I was finishing my doctorate. So eventually,
Mm.
thank goodness, my dad came around and got
Oh,
home
good.
here, which is wonderful. And I had finished my doctorate, and I said, I have to put this to good use. But if I'm going back into the workforce, I want to make sure that I'm doing something that's purposeful. And my husband, his injury, he's developed arthritis in his spine. So when
Oh,
I saw that the Arthritis Foundation was looking for someone, I said, you know what, this would not only help me be able to give back to the community, but truly I can bring that home, and whatever I'm doing hopefully can help my husband. My mom has osteoarthritis. And so I applied, and thankfully it's, I cannot say enough wonderful things about that organization. Truly a fantastic organization. The people there are genuine. They care. They really want to make a difference. When they say that they're fighting for a cure, they truly are. Even behind the scenes, as an insider now out, I can share that they're really doing what they're saying they're doing, and that was a wonderful organization. Mhm.
and I agree, and that's why I really enjoy, the last couple of years of my, the little involvement that I have been afforded thanks to you, to be a part of the organization. Um, and I think, even, for myself who has arthritis, I don't really even understand it much myself. And what I really appreciated, from what I was seeing with the work that the Arthritis Foundation Hawaii was doing, not only fighting to find a cure, but also fighting to bring more public awareness and education, and really make it something where people can understand. Because with more understanding, I think more can be accomplished, right? Because for the longest time, I just thought incorrectly, like, this is, grandpa grandma kind of thing, and you just get old, that's just what you get arthritis. But so
Right.
many, I think one of the first people I met, in working with the foundation was a young high school girl that
Mhm.
was, I guess, an ambassador for Arthritis Foundation
Right.
Hawaii with her story. So what were some things that, you know you got to experience and learn, but then also be a part of, with, the mission of the organization, that when you first started, um, being involved with them.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on is exactly right. I had known that arthritis could happen in younger adults just from injury.
Oh.
I was not aware that it could affect keiki. And
Hmm.
it's definitely, there's several different forms. And I also was not aware, there's 100 different forms of arthritis. And
Wow, I didn't know that.
right, I didn't either. I knew that, the top, let's say 5 to 10 forms, but anything that lends itself to joint pain is then categorized as a form of arthritis, and being an autoimmune disease,
Hmm.
and how serious. I think the misconception out there is that arthritis is a disease of inconvenience. You have
Yes.
some pain, we're going to just work through this, not realizing that it does lead to more serious issues. Arthritis can lend itself into kidney failures and, other serious disease. And in the keiki, some forms of arthritis, it can lead to death. So, I just really wanted to educate people on the seriousness of it, how impactful it is. 1 in 4 Hawaii residents have arthritis. So, more than likely, someone is suffering through this. And the other part of it, too, was for someone that's newly diagnosed, it can be a very lonely feeling.
Hmm.
Nobody really talks about it. So with the Arthritis Foundation, as you were saying, getting the awareness out, it's also awareness to patients saying you are not alone. You have an
Yeah.
entire support network. You're not the odd man out. So I just really was encouraged by everything that they were doing, and it felt really good. And hopefully the entire objective was giving people a better quality of life. So we don't have a cure yet. We're working towards it, but here are all the things that we can do to help you reduce pain, have support, be engaged with the community, things of that nature. So it's good.
What were some of the things that, stood out to you that were so different as far as the experience of being involved in a career of, corporate and business, and then going into a nonprofit organization? What were some of the things that, from having both perspectives that you saw that kind of stood out to you, whether it's good or bad?
No, I mean I can really say it's primarily good. One of the main things for me was a work life balance. So
Oh.
nonprofit, it might be just Arthritis Foundation, but I mean, I think most people in nonprofit world can probably say the same thing, that there is a work-life balance. When you're advocating for a cause, it makes you realize that people come first. And oftentimes it's
Hmm.
family. Family comes first. And I remember really early on working with the Arthritis Foundation, we were on a Zoom meeting. This was during COVID and early COVID time. And someone said, I've got to hop off this meeting. I need to go pick up my kids from school. And I remember thinking in the back of my mind, what is she doing? This is like career suicide. Not realizing that that was the culture that they had built. Like, it's okay. We have lives, we have families. You might have to run out and get your kid at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we also know that you're the person waking up at 6 a.m. to check emails, or not going to
Hmm.
bed until 9 o'clock at night because an event detail needs to be completed. So they were really supportive in creating that work-life balance and recognizing that that there are priorities outside of what we're doing. So it was really shocking and in a really good way. So I felt like,
Yeah.
wow, what a healthy culture.
You're mentioning, family and work-life balance. As curious, if you could share a little bit about your family life. Like, what is your background as far as your parents, and so you said you come from a Latin background. What is your ethnicity, and what? Yeah.
My mom's side, she's Mexican, from
Okay.
Mexico, and her family's primarily from like the Guadalajara region in Mexico. And my dad did not know his mother, so we really weren't too sure. But I recently took a ancestor and me type thing, and
Mm-hmm.
discovered I'm 25% Scottish from my dad's. And I had no idea. We knew my dad was Native American. He's Native American, and he knew that he had some like French Swiss in there. But then to learn that I had such a heavy Scot influence or ethnicity was really shocking. So yeah, here I am. I'm kind of this melting pot of Native American, Mexican, Scot, and like European mix of French and Swiss.
Wow. What a interesting mix.
It really is. I know. So yeah, it's been really interesting to learn all about that. And my husband, his family's from Scotland, and they came over
Oh,
and settled in like the Newfoundland, Canada area, and then migrated into the states, through the generations. But so we always knew he was Scottish. And then for me to find out a couple of years ago, he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I really am." So I think our boys are primarily Scottish descent. Yeah.
wow. So maybe that's where the connection, the unknown connection, right?
Right. Yeah.
How did you and your husband meet?
Oh, that's a good story too. My best friend was dating his best friend, and so my best friend had a barbecue and invited people over, and that's how we met. And now we're married 14 years later, and they're no longer together.
Oh, uh,
So we met
their sacrifice for your
right.
gain.
Yeah,
Right?
we appreciate it definitely.
So was that in high school time or?
Oh, I wish. No, no. I was in my early 30s at the time. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah. I know.
wow.
I
So
had children late in life. I was career focused.
uh, so what was it about? Was it like when you guys met at this barbecue? Was there something there already, or was it just like that's where you met, but somehow later on is when the connection was made?
Yeah. I was really not into dating when we met. I was, that is the furthest thing in my mind at the time. And I guess he had seen pictures of me that my best friend had around her house, and he always wanted her to introduce me to him. So when we met, it was pretty early on where he said, I would like to get to know you better. And I said, okay, but I need us to be friends before, anything. And so he said, yeah. So it took about 6 months. And then we're both big sports fans. And so he is a Angels fan. And at the time I was a Padres fan because that's where we both come from. And so we
Mhm.
went to a game where they were competing, playing against each other. And during the seventh inning stretch, he said, "You know what? I'm not dating anybody anymore. And I really hope that you'd consider not dating anyone else either." And I said, "Yeah." I knew by then. I said, "Yeah." And that's where the story started, really, of dating and getting to know each other more than just friends.
Wow. I feel like that's the best ways when you start out as friends because I think the facade or barriers are not as strong as when you just start out initially dating because you just don't want to screw it up when you're dating. But friends, like, a little less stressful, right?
Exactly. This is me. I mean, if you enjoy hanging around with me the way, who I am authentically, then that's great. And that is kind of my mindset back then. And it worked. It worked out beautifully. I mean, I think it took just a couple of months before I knew that it was, my emotions were turning into something more than just friends, but I wasn't going to say anything because I had made such a big deal of just being friends. And so I was thankful when he, made statement during the game.
What so was the your lack of desire to be in relationship
Mhm.
the same as the reason why you wanted to start a family later is was it because you were so concentrated on your career and focused on that? Was that the reason why?
So I had been married before, and I
Mm,
was just really kind of coming out of that. And I just wanted to kind of take the time of self discovery and recognizing, okay, now what do I want? Now what do I want for myself? What do I want, for my future? And so I was just in that introspective kind of mode of, you need to do some work and figuring out what you want and and truly, I really recognize that, relationships are a two-way street and things
Hmm.
dissolve for whatever reasons, but each person has its own part in it. And so I wanted to do a little bit of work saying, before I attempt a relationship again, what do I need to be for the person that I'm trying to be with one day? It
Mm.
was kind of and so that was that time.
How, what kind of things did you do to, because uh, in fact, a friend of mine has been kind of just starting this kind
Mhm.
of similar journey with a similar experience, and they also made that statement of like, I gotta take this time to, self-reflect and work on me. But at the same time, they're like, I'm not sure what that looks like or how it's done. Like,
Right.
what did for you? What was it that you did to help you achieve that and get that introspection?
Yeah, I think what I really recognized early on was I had this need for everyone to like me.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I was this yes person, constantly saying yes. And not that that's a bad thing, but I realized that I wasn't really taking the time to do the things that I wanted to do that was important to me. And if you don't really take care of yourself, you don't have much
Hmm.
to give. And
Yeah.
so, I did that, and then just realizing, what I could have done differently, whether it was in conversations, and I really started to identify too some of those. Oh, this was my experience growing up, and
Ah,
I'm
yes.
doing it as an adult. And how do I change that? Really, I think as a kid, things were kind of swept under the rug at
Hmm.
home and really not communicated. And when there was any issues, I would internalize instead
Yeah.
of communicating. And I still do that. My husband will still have to pull me out to say, let's talk. What's going on? And I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'm just in that mode of, okay, I'm processing.
Yeah.
And, he's like, you're not here alone. We can do this together, and I'm like, oh, you're right. And so, yeah, so those kinds of things I think are what I was working on. So that way I could contribute better in the future.
Yeah, it's funny because so much of what you're saying, it kind of sounds so familiar to me with my experience as well. It's like for the longest time, I used to always think like, oh, I only date crazy people. Like it's always there, like it's always them that's the problem. And then as I finally learned about myself, I was like, oh, I could see that I made them seem crazy because of the way I was so self-destructive, I guess, in the way that I thought of things and acted. And a lot of it similar to you, stemmed from childhood and childhood experiences
Yeah.
and tendencies to do things like just keeping it in and stuff. So it took me a lot longer than it took you to to learn that. I only started learning that like maybe 3 4 years ago.
I think with our age difference, we were probably the same age. No, I was just equally late in life. I'm just a little. So yeah, don't feel bad. I think and that's a maturity thing, right? I think we all get to
Yeah,
that point. It's being mature enough to recognize that you can be part of the problem too, and how to
yeah.
realize that, and yeah,
I love that your husband works with you to like what call it out and talk it through, and that's kind of our formula as well here with me and Jamie. um and I'm always curious to hear like what kind of your experience or how it works for you guys.
yeah.
Others that go through that, like what kind of, because for us it's like I have to be same as you, like have it pulled out of me,
Mhm.
and it's hard because I know uh in my head, yes, that would make sense and it would be better,
Which is
but it's
completely
so
rational.
hard for me to say it. What is it like for you, and how do you guys get through your communications to keep this going?
I think what helps is my husband's really strong in his faith. We both are, and it's really just kind of talking that through in that sense. How what would God want you to do? What does He model? What are the truths in our faith? So For example, before, when I would always worry about if someone liked me, now the
Mhm.
truth is I am a child of God in our faith, right? And that should be what matters. And do the way we live our life, we hope to honor that.
Mhm.
And so if we're giving, what we think is our best, and someone still chooses not to like us, then we have to just accept that. And that's okay. And so I think that that helps with our conversations at home. It's more kind of recognizing and identifying what we believe to be true, and
Mhm.
and go from there.
I think that that's the same for us too, in the sense that having that shared outlook or belief in the same values
Hmm.
and such keeps that communication much clearer and on a level of the, I guess it weaves together well.
Right.
Whether it's religion or philosophy, like whatever it is, but when you are coming from the same place and going towards the same direction, it seems to, I don't know if it's there's a better trust or a better understanding, but it seems to work better that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and every marriage has its challenges. I mean, we're not
Mhm.
perfect at communicating. Like I said, he really has to struggle sometimes to communicate with me, and vice versa. He can be equally the same way. But the point is that we try, and I
Yeah.
think that's it. As long as you put in the effort and you know what the priority is, we're the priority. Our marriage, that foundation is more important, just second to a relationship with your faith, right? So,
Mhm.
so as long as we're making the effort, then it's okay not to be perfect, but we're doing our best.
Well, is that kind of the experience that you went through with self-discovery, working through this marriage with your husband? Is that kind of what inspired you to um, to create this business that you have of Talk Story with me? Is there a connection to that, the two
A little
there?
bit, yeah. So I remember when I was starting my doctorate, really the wonderful thing about the school is they said, we're going to start project based assignments to build your dissertation through your program, which was great, instead of just doing it at the end. And so, really early on, it was this trying to discover what I was interested in. Because I was in educational leadership, I coming from different industries and seeing male dominant leadership roles.
Yeah.
And I knew the kind of biases and prejudices out there with female leaders, they existed. The wonderful thing that I'll always preempt is I had male mentors and male managers, supervisors throughout most of my career. They were phenomenal. I had
Mhm.
wonderful experiences. So this is nothing against male leadership. It was just an observation of, is there truth to the way women's leadership is perceived? And so that's what made me do my research on that. And I wanted it to be quantitative, meaning just numbers based. Like, you can't argue the numbers.
Mhm.
And it was done through assessments and things of that nature. And that discovery of, wow, through research and my own study that I put together, there is no justification for
Oh.
that bias. We are equally competent in most areas, and in some areas we tend to lean a little bit higher than male, leaders. And only because I think one of the statements often made is, "Oh, women are emotional," so they're
Yeah,
bringing,
they've said that a lot.
yeah, women are
Well,
emotional.
men are emotional too.
They can be, right, and so.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because now with newer leadership styles like transformational leadership, things of that nature, it's this introduction of emotional intelligence, right? This emotional
Mhm.
intelligence of understanding people. And so, really, emotional intelligence is a female natural trait. That's, I mean, can we get emotional in the sense that we get angry? And, of course. But I think that truly using that emotional intelligence in a leadership setting is beneficial. And that was
Yeah.
what my argument was. And, and that's what, ultimately, was derived is that yes, women can be effective leaders. And then the argument is, can we lead in our natural ability? Because most women leaders, at least my age, it's changing now a little bit, but we were taught by male leaders, which means we were taught male leadership traits.
Yeah.
We're leading in the style that they were doing.
Hmm.
So if we as women leaders, now the more seasoned ones, go back to younger emerging leaders, female leaders, and teach them just kind of a natural trait of this is, how you can lead authentically and you will
Yeah.
be equally effective. We have the numbers to back you up. We have so many. There's Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, all these research firms that are saying the same thing. So,
Hmm.
I just really it was just this need to empower women, to unleash women, to really believe. That was interesting findings of really, the contributions we make, not only to the business side of things, but also to like even our nation's economy. We make
Hmm.
significant contributions, uh,
Yeah.
and then women just don't realize that maybe. And so there's this thing, it was interesting on the assessment that women would kind of grade themselves less and men would
Hmm.
always grade themselves more.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to, create this shift or be a part of the shift that allows women to feel equally competent.
I love that because it's I mean, I was raised by a single mom, so I think that's why I tend to
Oh,
uh,
yes.
uh, you know gravitate towards female leader type roles and that type of leadership style. Um, and yeah, I in all of my jobs and throughout my career, I found that the female leaders were the ones that I really enjoyed working with and under. And but I did see like what you're saying that everything is just modeled after what the male leaders kind of did and stuff. And I've heard recently like it's so difficult because where a lot of the business relationships and transactions kind of develop is on the golf course and stuff, and like
Sure.
so now women got to learn how to play golf and things like that, and it's like, oh man, you know that's tough. I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that, and I hate golf, so I remember I was like, I'm never gonna make it in business because I can't stand golf.
That's funny that you bring that up because my husband's been trying to get into golf and I'm very competitive. I was an athlete through high school and college and early college. And so, but golf is the one thing that I am not mastering. I definitely need to hire a professional and go to a clinic or something like that because that's one. So if I had to rely on that for business, I would be toast. Yeah,
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Well, so with that, then what would you say? Where do you see those type of traditional business relationships between leaders happening and taking place for women that are like you and I that don't like golf? Like, what are other ways that you're seeing kind of these business relationships being created and cultivated in?
There are phenomenal organizations now. There's a lot of professional associations that are,
Mm,
for it can be anything from like Latina professionals to, women in engineering to whatever the case is. We are banding together to support one another and to provide resources and those kinds of things. And it can be simply too working your networks. So having those coffee meetings with another female in the community, that you want to work with or learn from or mentor, whatever the scenario is. So it's a really broad spectrum of the
mhm.
opportunity out there. We're not pigeonholed to just do one certain thing. And I think really just getting rid of the stigma of that there is a competition. I think,
Yeah,
we can all be equally successful. There is enough out there in the world that we can all be successful and really learning, the gift of giving, how
yeah,
really impactful that is to you as a giver. Yes, they're getting a gift, but as a giver to give of your time, of your experience, whatever the case is, is really a blessing. And so I really encourage that. That's why I was saying, to get some of these other female leaders that are more seasoned to mentor up and coming leaders so that way we can encourage them and unleash them. Like I love that term, to unleash them to really live out their potential and live out their dreams and define their own success. That was another thing that I learned early on was, there's a lot of female leaders that want to be CEOs. I knew early on I did not want that. My definition of success is completely different, and because family was my priority, and I didn't want to not have the time with them. So I needed
Yeah.
to redefine what success was for me. So I encourage women at any age to do that, to really define what is success for you, and and follow that.
Yeah, that's so powerful because I think throughout my life, I always defined success as something that wasn't comfortable to me, but I thought, well, that's the way the world is. And so, I kept trying to obtain something that never was really a desire or passion for me. And that's why I never actually made it there. And it
Right.
wasn't until defining what success meant to me and what was important to me have I finally feel that feeling of accomplishment and fulfillment and enjoy what it is that I do. So I love that that's what you're helping others learn at a much earlier age than I so that they don't
Yeah.
have to suffer through that
It took
that
me
journey, right?
late to figure that out for myself. And I'm still trying to work it out, if we're being
Yeah.
honest. So, yes, if we can kind of give someone else a leg up and a head start on that process, I think that's powerful for them for sure.
And I love what you're talking about and describing isn't that you're trying to teach others to come to change their ways to appease the women that you're trying to help. It's that you're just helping women to reach their potential. So it's not that somebody else has to lose something for others to gain. It's just let's all just come up to the same level. Like let's bring them up
Yeah.
and give them the same kind of opportunities and abilities to fulfill their potential. Versus I think a lot of people always assume that if one's going to gain, that means somebody's going to have to sacrifice. And in this case, no, not at all, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want a seat at the table, then just make sure you're doing the things to earn that spot. But it
Hmm.
shouldn't be based on gender. Who
Yeah.
sits at the table? That's my only argument. Arguably right now it still might be the case that women might have to work a little bit harder to get there depending
Hmm.
on the environment,
Yeah.
but if that is something that is of importance to you, then blaze that trail so that way the women coming up behind you don't have to do that. So yeah, that's kind of where I said, but yes, not to take anything away, there are phenomenal male leaders out there. Absolutely. I think all of my mentors have been men, and I wouldn't be
Yeah.
here today if it wasn't for their advice and expertise. And so I'm forever grateful for sure.
And so with your company and your what you do, I know that you do a lot of speaking engagements and trainings and such, but can you share a little bit more about your company and maybe the ideal type of person that want to would benefit from what you are helping with?
Sure, it's my mission again just to get the information out there and really do that in a way that's inspiring. And I really want is to have these like aha moments with other female leaders or potential female leaders out there. So I try to work with university students, high school students, and then associations. And it's not that it has to be an all female audience. Anybody can hear this information and realize that maybe it's time for a different outlook or cultural change or just the awareness that we can be good contributors.
Yeah.
So, but really, it is just this empowerment of here are the facts. There's no arguing them. This is who we are, and if go after your dreams. I always like to start when I'm getting up on stage, that song High Hopes. Have you heard that? But,
No.
so I'll have to send you a copy, but it really is just keeping those high hopes, of what your potential is, what your contribution is, and making a difference.
I love that you brought up like it's not just like only females can attend, like men, others can gain from this as well, because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with your work with Arthritis Foundation, in that education and awareness is what will bring change in for positive and growth. So even though you may not have arthritis, having the understanding and awareness will help everybody in general. So same thing with this mission of yours,
Sure.
understanding, you know, what would help with the environment as a whole, with understanding what women are going through, what can be done. It benefits everybody to know that and to understand the facts, right?
Exactly. I'm not coming out with a new discovery. This is not anything new. So I just really see it as my opportunity to continue the message. And based on the research that I've done, and really coming from, more of an academic background where it's not so subjective, it really is
Mhm.
fact based, and sharing that so that way women do feel, oh, there is evidence of what we can do.
Yeah, see, I think this what your message is and what you're doing is so valuable and important, especially for the young, generation, because when we go to school, we just learn all these like things that I used to always say, what is this going to help me with in the future?
Yes.
Like, you know,
Yes.
and it was a lot of hopelessness and confusion and fear. But to have someone like yourself come in and give this knowledge and give this perspective and share these facts is so empowering, and it opens up so many more opportunities, and especially for self discovery. And so I would hope that all schools would bring someone like yourself in to have these talks and discussions. And I would love to find a way to get you into more schools and places
Oh, I'd
to
love
share
that.
this, because that's what I think we would need in our communities, and in our for our families, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to get out there and continue that, and hopefully, that this is a ripple effect. Like you
Yeah.
said, as people learn, then they share, and then it continues on. So, yes.
So we have, I know a lot of our audience are in the education sector and such. So, for them who might be curious about how this would work, as far as, is it something that you would come in and speak in a series or run a class, or is it like a one-time thing, or and how would they, get connected with you to seek out the possibility of having you come into their schools? What does that involve?
Very simple. I either do via Zoom, but I really try to encourage in person, just because
Hmm.
that creates so much more of that engagement portion of everything. But I can
Yeah.
do Zoom and in person, so it can be anything from 30 minutes to an hour, where I kind of share my findings. Like it's would be similar to like a TED talk, right? But
Oh, yeah, yeah.
with a little bit more of a fun aspect to it, not just the information, but really let's did you know kind of a talk,
Mm.
and then open it up for potential questions, and see if there's something, if there's more information I can provide, or if there's research that I need to continue doing and follow up with. And yes, so I have my website talkstorywithme.com. I have all of my information there, my professional and personal histories there, and kind of how this talk came to be, and my contact information's there, and it's really simple.
Yeah, and we'll put the link to your website in the show notes in the description as well. So for those of you listening who are too lazy and don't want to write it down, we'll have it ready for you. And is there a certain age range that you tend to target, or is this kind of go broad spectrum of age ranges, and backgrounds.
Yeah, I've been originally it was kind of the college age to career, right? But I've
Hmm.
learned that middle school, high school, there's such an
Yeah.
opportunity because these young ladies are deciding what their next steps in life are.
Yes.
And so, the earlier that I can bring this message and hopefully empower them to think of it differently, the better. And so
Yeah.
I've kind of opened it up to that as well in talking to these younger ladies.
Yeah. I don't know why, but a lot of these schools in the last several years have invited me to come to like career day and do a talk and stuff, and I was like, I'll talk about my industry, but I'm also like, I don't know if I'm the right person because I
Or
I'm the one who like
yes,
like didn't finish college and stuff, and I'm gonna say, yeah, I still made it out okay without my formal
absolutely.
education, but I
Yeah,
would feel like you would be perfect for those, and all of these schools have these either career days or type of days dedicated to helping students learn more about what's available to them out there in the world. And I would think it would just make total sense to have you be involved with those, because that would be so helpful. And in the students that I've spoken to, I can see that, and they've shared too. Like most students have no idea what's available to them or what's the
cool.
potential. To
Right.
have them hear from you, these things would open up so much more possibilities for them to imagine and discover and realize. So
That's the
I,
hope.
I hope to see you in at all of these career days that are out there. And if I'm at any of them, it would be fun to
Yeah.
connect with you there.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that we had this time together, and for us to get to know each other more. And from the day that we met on Zoom, because we met during the pandemic,
Right.
and you brought me on board to be involved with um, the Walk for the Cure events and stuff. I always felt this really great appreciation and connection with you, and we didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to get real deep. So for us to have this opportunity today, it kind of proved to me like, yep, see, I knew there was something there that
Your
really I gravitated towards you with, and I'm so
feeling is mutual.
um, yeah, I'm so glad to learn your story, and so inspired by what you've committed to doing here with trying to make this change and impact in our community. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for this friendship that we've grown just kind of by happenstance. Really,
Yeah.
it's really neat.
And if we honestly can go back, it actually started when I was on the board for the Association of Talent Development. You came
That's
in
right.
and did an event for us virtually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Was
great.
that the one where I was dressed in a it was a Christmas themed event, and I was in this really hot Santa suit?
It was like a tuxedo, but it was like Christmas wrapping.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was
With
like,
Santa's faces all over. Yeah.
I think so. It was great.
And we didn't have air condition there. So I remember I
Oh,
had a little towel underneath the table, but every now and then I'd quickly dab my face because I was sweating so much in that. I was like,
oh,
oh, what a bad decision.
things you do for success, Nolan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun little, you know, what is that? Backstory to how it started. And look where we are now.
We are now. Yes, exactly.
Well, Marshawn, thank you so much for this. This has been great. I know we'll be continuously in touch, and as I think we'll always be attached at the hip in some fashion, and I definitely want to keep in touch with seeing your mission develop, and what you're doing with Talk Story with me. So yeah, I look forward to the next time that we connect again and
Thank
and grow
you.
our relationship.
Thank you for talking stories.